and welcome back to Forewarned, Forearmed. I do apologise, I haven't been very active in the last few months. That is because my family circumstances changed and I had a new child. But enough of that, that is not why we're here tonight. It's tonight because you probably guessed it, like, doing this at night. I'm trying to get this out as quickly as possible for you guys. This one's big. The new IDF book. So, I really like this release. I know a few people are very upset about it just because of the pure fact that it's not the full update to the book. It's like, where are the other nations? Where's my T-72Bs for Iraqs? Where's, a new fraction, perhaps Jordanians with chieftains? That kind of thing. And I can understand people sitting there going, we haven't had a full Team Yankee release for nearly a year. And we've only been giving it dribbles. So, that is understandable. I'm not the only one in the community who's probably sitting there going, I want a little more this year than really just a nation by itself. I really would mind Jordanian chieftains. Wink, wink. So, let's get on and have a look at the new IDF book. Because as far as I'm concerned, the new book is great for their force in the fact that it gives them the boost they finally require, not just to be playable, but competitively playable. Now, that's big in itself. I think if you've seen my video previously on the IDF forces unused allies to booster up their AT, that's no longer a requirement. With this book, it solves all those issues, which is great. Let's get into it. First up, the Israeli forces. We have got 3 new formations added to the existing ones, including that were updated in the PDF from last year. So, the new formations are going to be the Merkava 3, the Reserve Mech Infantry, and the Pereh. Existing is still the same, a couple of minor changes, but that's it. The only other big one to the Orbat is the addition of Hail and MRS to the artillery. Then you've also got the Apache, aka Cobra, and Viper's been in there for a while. So they're the new additions to your force support. Alright, on to the first formation. Actually, we'll cover special rules because there's a few things in there that I found that were quite nice and very niche, especially to the Israelis themselves. So, of course, you've got airborne, so naturally, Pereh, you can do the missions from Red Dawn, which is great. I really like that added fact, and those missions are quite nice. So, LMRS, naturally, counts as 2 when firing weapons. The big one you've got to remember is MPATs or Dragon 2. If you upgrade one, you've got to upgrade the others. That's naturally. Napalm's been in there before. Same with the no line of sight required for Pereh. Radar, of course, for the Zeus. The big one is the CO. The Reach troops for the Sarat they count as aggressive. So I really like the rule, but the only problem is the unit that has it has a 5+ counterattack. So it's like, it really irks me. It's like, when I saw that rule, I was like, great, Paratroopers. If they've got the whole formation across to have that rule, that would be beautiful. With a 3+ counterattack, it's like, I'm going to break off, but I'm going to break off and still be able to cover the objective, which is great. So it's like I can just move 8 inches straight through your infantry and just plan on the other side of the objective. And it's like I'm not going to be forced off the objective. I thought that was a great rule, but it just went to a unit with a very poor counterattack, and I was like, it really irked me. It was really disappointing because I was like sitting there with some really nasty shenanigans and using, a paratroop unit, just having it as a force support, black box support choice, and just having it like just sitting on an objective and just go, you're not going to shift me from this objective. It's like, I'm going to counterattack, I'm going to break off, and I'm just going to keep moving up and down and playing the guessing game, and then each turn just holding you while I grab your objective. That was the plan with that, but that got quickly squashed when I read who had it, and I was like, oh man, that is bad. Other thing to note is the tandem warhead, which is on the Tamiz 2 missiles as well. So the Pereh has that. As for the formations, so unlike, we'll go straight through the Merkava formations, which is pretty much stock standard across the board. For all 3 of the Merkava formations, the 1, 2, and 3, there's no real change to their force structure or the formation structure of the 3 of them. The only big difference is, unlike previously where your HQ and your 2 compulsory had to be the same tank type, this is no longer the option, so it means you can mix and match your Merkavas depending on what you want to do. So, which is great, because it's like if you want to run Mach 1s with Mach 3, you can, and vice versa. Which means, especially when you look at the points for the Mach 3s, it's like, yeah. But be warned, dynamic points are coming for the Mach 3s. I'm aware that they're going to be roughly Leo 2 points for the Mach 3s for dynamic points. So that's a bonus. So it makes them very playable within a competitive setting when using dynamic points. For a tournament not to be using dynamic points, I really find it weird nowadays, but that's another subject. Alright, so the Mach 3 itself is just a beast of a tank. Front armor 23, side 10, top 2. So, and then you got Churchill. So, it is just a beat stick. It's like, I'm just going to waltz in, slap faces, take names, and just mosey on down. Pretty much like the John Wick of tanks at this stage. I think if he had an AT of 23, 24, he would literally be the John Wick of tanks. But in retrospect, if it's like, wow, individually there's 17 points a pop. So for a unit of 3, that's quite hefty. So, as I said, they're like pretty much Leo 2 priced for the A5s for the West Germans. So they're on par with that. The only difference is like Leo 2 for A5s have the 13 side armor and 22 front. Whereas this is 23 and 10. You still get some really good use out of it. I think the way I'd probably been using the Merkavas is definitely as a support choice or a force support choice going forward. I think only if you're playing like tank only battles or tank only tournaments, I would definitely be looking at dynamic points with the Merkava 3 and just run a full formation of them. Like the fact that they've got a counter attack of 3 and a remount of 2 and a morale of 3, they're pretty reliant to get back in their vehicles and keep fighting, which is pretty good, especially if you're thinking about running a unit of 2. That's handy to know. So that's the Merkava formations, because there's no real change to any of them. There's only just the slight change, but there's no real change. It's just like, here's a new tank, and I can see why a lot of people seem to be a little bit upset, because it's like, you didn't really give us what we wanted. Like a full Middle Eastern book probably would have been really great. Not only would it have been able to update the IDF, but it would have been able to update the Iraqis with a few more modern tanks. Maybe the Syrians, not so much, but it would have been a perfect opportunity to chuck in some Jordanians. I think that would have been really good. Because I think a lot of people are like looking at Fate of the Nation and thinking, oh yeah, it'd be really good to have some of those forces come into the Team Yankee atmosphere, or, that era. So, no real change to the Reese platoon or 113 and Jeep. Magivs, aka your M60, they get the option of having arrow added to them, and they also have a better front armor, which is good. So that's an added bonus if you're really thinking about just taking some cheap tanks. But I think overall, when you look at them to their US counterparts, it's like, is it really having 1 plus armor for 1 less AT just to have accurate and brutal? Not really. I think you're better off taking like the Shoats. They just, less armor, but better in the long term. They're just cheaper. Well, actually, no, they're not cheaper. They are cheaper. Cheaper in the long run. And you can just spam the living hell out of Centurions anyway. I love the Centurion. It's just a decent little tank. I think the Shoats, I think they're pretty good. The Rabbi Reese platoon is the one I'm talking about with the Sayor rule, if you're wondering. But we'll get down to that. So, mech infantry get a bit of a boost with a Nagama show. And the Vazate upgrades to the transports. Vazate is a point for the whole unit. Nagama show to, I think that's how you say it. Nagama shots. Nagama shots. They're 1 point per unit, so you can get quite expensive quite easily for a mech infantry platoon. If you're gonna go down the routes of the nags, because that's what I'm just gonna call them from now on, the nags. They're going to be 1 point each, and if you've got 4 113s, that's 4 points, taking your full mech platoon up to 15. And then if you really want to upgrade like your B300s, which is good, which is basically the IDF's version of a RPG with better firepower, that's 1 point. So you start to add where you can start to look at maybe spending 40 points just on 2 infantry units in the HQ, which in a competitive standpoint, that is painful. Like nearly 20 point infantry, it's like, ouch. You know, I really don't think I'd want to be paying 20 points for a single infantry unit, especially when you have things like West Germans out there with Marder 2s for 11 points for the same cost, with a, where upgraded to 50 mils. They can reach out, they can do damage. They're small unit sizes compared to these guys, but they just have so much better technical flexibility, especially with their unit. Like, I'm thinking, if you're paying 4 points to upgrade everything, like all your transports, like, great, they have front armor 13, they have side armor 6 and ERA. They're great. They're really heavy transport, but they don't have any, real hitting firepower to punch back against someone unless they've got like a Dragon missile attachment to it as like a mount. And that's the only reason why I can really think of this, is like, you pretty much like put one with your Dragon mount and run it around with your Dragon mount, but then that just defies what the purpose of them is in the first place, transporting infantry. So I don't really see much use for the nags. The Versate, I do see a use for, just for the pure fact that it's Applique armor upgrade for a point for the whole unit. Very similar to the Warriors, you still got 50 cals on them, so they're still pretty decent, and it's a point for the whole unit. And it still pulls off a relatively cheap unit. It doesn't make them overall expensive, so that would be my choice. And the Israeli infantry is still pretty decent for what they get. They're large, chunky boyos with plenty of weapons. I don't really see the point of upgrading a single Dragon team for a single point, especially when Dutch and US get it for a point for 2. And most of them have like 2 dragons within their unit, so it's kind of a waste. I think it comes down to a situation where you want to, but most of the time I'll probably be upgrading those RPGs, so I get a better firepower for 3 of my RPGs, which is more bang for your buck in my opinion. So I'd definitely be choosing that. Moving on to the Choco, or the reserve infantry. Same makeup again, but you miss out on the decent upgrades to the transports. So you're stuck with non-transports, 113s, same layout as there is normal mech infantry. The only difference is all your soft stats basically turned into 4s rather than 3s for your skill, courage, and whatnot. You still hit on 4s, which is great. Your save's still 3+, so it's like it's sort of like, do you want a unit that can hold objectives, or do you want a unit that can actually hold objectives, if you know what I mean? I'd rather have a unit that has a 3+ morale and rating, just for the pure fact that I'll stay in the fight, especially if you start getting creepingly low to 2 teams for the infantry. But I think reserve infantry do have their place. I think if you were playing non-dynamic points, I think that's where you probably see reserve infantry being used. So you could scrape in points to maybe take Mach 3s as your choice, especially if you're going to take 3, where it's freaking half your points and 100 points. But yeah, I think the only real reason is maybe to take the smaller reserve units and, you know, give them that, because don't forget, you've also got to pay for the transports for the reserves, and that's 2 points for the unit as well, so it makes them like 10 points. So it's kind of tricky. It's like, upgrade transports in 1 unit, have no transports and just foot sloggers. But I think I do find in use for the reserve infantry. I just wish you could upgrade the RPGs to be 300s. That would actually make them quite playable. Because you can upgrade their dragon teams. I just don't see why you can't upgrade their RPG teams. Good thing is though, 3 81mm mortars for a point. So it's a lot better than some things. It's actually cheap tubes with smoke. So for a point, it's pretty crazy when it comes to mortars. I think that's probably one of the other reasons why you might take a small unit reserve, so you can get one of the cheapest smoke bombardments in the game for a point. Just be warned, it is 4+ skill, so if you have an FO, it shouldn't be an issue, but yeah, that is a bit of a trap. Toes. So you do have the normal toes, AT-21, but the MPATs, the MARPATs, they look ridiculously good for what they are. And I think if you're looking at the Jeep anti-tank teams, if you had the choice, you'd want to upgrade them to the Rabbis, just so you could actually have an armor save, which is a little bit more flexibility, because it means, you know, if the Jeeps are pinned, they can't use the missiles. You can't pin armor. So naturally, I'd go the Rabbis if I had the choice between the two. Paratroopers, I really do like the Perehs. I just wish they had that special rule so I could counter-attack and go through units for some objective holding shenanigans. Again, same layout as the mech infantry. The only difference is you've also got to pay for the transports, and then you've also got to upgrade your other things. So they start getting expensive quite quickly as well. So they really start adding up to like nearly, 16, 17 points per unit. So it gets quite expensive. Yep, same anti-tank options, except for you get the Rabbi anti-tank platoon, which is a good choice. Support options, I think, are still good. The MLRS is a nice addition, but in my opinion, it's just too expensive for what it is. At 10 points for 3, yeah, it's still a 6-tube launcher, as per the rules for being an MLRS, but when you compare it to its counterparts for West Germans, it's hence why the Hail. I think if you're going to take something for a salvo, the Hail is probably a good choice at 4 points, and skill 3 as well. So it's like, and you get smoke bombardment, so it's a naturally good choice. Let's talk about Pereh. So Pereh is a little niche unit. Like, it's always been quite crazy when you come across an Israeli player and they got Perehs and you just sit there and go, thankfully you can't take multiples of them, because that would just be broken as hell. Just sitting there and sniping your units from the back of the board. Yeah, it's going to hit your front armor. Yeah, you're still going to get, certain aspects of things like cover and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's like, if he hits you, he's just going to keep doing that. And if he puts up a really good defense, there's not much you can really do about it, because eventually one of those is going to get through, even though it was AT-21. Yeah, that was until the update. So, the update really makes it a well worth taking unit. Yes, it's gone up by nearly double the amount of points for the same amount of 3, but I think it was well worth the points cost. You've gone up to AT-23, heat, no line of sight, as usual. However, you got tandem warhead. So the tandem warhead is going to be really great against things such as ERA. Because it's like, oh, you got heat, that's fine. I've got tandem warhead. Oh, there goes your ERA. So, very good for hunting things like T-64s and T-72Bs, which will hardly get a save at all against this thing. And then you also have your T-80s, which will be like a bit of shaken, not stirred kind of situation, where they'll feel a hit, and it's like if you barrel badly, it could hurt. But the fact is, if this starts hitting things like your artillery or your AA, yeah, it's really going to mess up your day. Because it's also got an extended range. So, 64 inches previously was like, oh, you could put them at one corner of the board and it could just barely reach one corner of a 6.4. Like, you'd still have a little margin where you could hide outside that corner and go, you can't touch me. Yeah, gone are those days. So it's like, maybe we should start playing on 8x6s with Pereh. Because it's 104 inches now. Well, you still got a minimum range of 16, which is great. It's like, if you're playing on a long board edge, and that thing's hiding up on a long board edge, as per some of the missions, it's like, oh, I'm going to reach out and touch you and hit you pretty hard. So, yeah, it's a scary thought. I'm just glad you just can't take multiples of them. Because that would be so much fun to play against. You still got your stock standard AA system, Chaparral, Red Eyes, Zeus, and Vards. No change. The Rabbi Reese platoon is what actually gives you that Sayor rule, and they're 4 points. It's like, yeah, that's great, but morale's really good, but it's their counter-attack I really don't like, because it's like, if it's based off the counter-attack, it's like, yeah, you're praying for 5s for them to push through. If it was based off their morale, it would be great, because you'd be rolling those 3+ and pushing through. Maybe that's something we can change with the FAQ coming in. Skyhawk, no change there either, but it's no Aussie Doomhawk. You don't get Mavericks attached to it, which is pity, but yeah. I think the Anzac Skyhawks will always be referred to as Doomhawks in my opinion, just for the pure fact that you do have those nasty missiles attached to them for quite cheap. Vipers, you get the upgrade for the MPATs, which is a good addition for 18 points, which is good. I find that upgrade will be quite nice to it. And then, of course, the Cobra, which is basically the IDF's version of the Apache, which will be also quite nice. The other things to consider in the book is also your airborne operations, so you can get like the Sea Stallion for the Israelis as well. There's also some great new scenarios and updates to certain other things as well, to include certain things, which is great. So you've actually got upgraded scenarios to include things like with the Merkava 3 and the Shoats, which is good as well. And then naturally you got your Painting Guide as well. Overall, I think it's great, new edition. It's given us quite a bit more flexibility, especially when creating a competitive list for Israelis. Like the fact that now I can go out, build a list, and go, I've got all the tools I need in this one book. I don't need to go, oh, crap, I need to go look at another book. I need to think, oh, if I've got to spend 15 points, I can fit in a light attack company for the US and at least get some TOW2 missiles and some really small units that I can actually hunker down and hold a chunk for 15 points and then fill out my unit, because I'm waiting for 2 units of Merkava 2s or Merkava 1s to roll up to help me out before I get any decent AT on the board. So, gone are those days, which is great. So, hindsight, I'm happy we've got an updated IDF book. But I guess, like a lot of you, I wish we did have a little bit more. So, hopefully, we might see something in the future. Fingers crossed. But until then, good hunting.